Hanoi was built in the northern part of the S-shaped country on the bank of the Red River, west of Ha Long Bay. The city was the capital of French Indochina between 1902 and 1953, later the capital of North Vietnam, then after 1976, the capital of the whole country. It grew into a metropolis with 3.5 million people out of a small riverside village. Its development is due to the fact that in 1010, the emperor had a palace for his royal court built here, and he made the settlement the capital city of the country with the name Thang Long. The name means lifting dragon and is in close connection with the legend of the foundation of the country. The sights of Hanoi are focused on the big West Lake and Hoan Kiem Lake. Local people like doing sports, playing chess, or sitting in the parks around the lakes. It's trendy to fly a kite and play badminton, both of which are ancient Chinese inventions, but due to globalization, we can also meet young people with skateboards or on motocross bikes. We can hire a scooter or a bike, or sit in a paddle boat. The Chua Truong Quoc Pagoda stands on the small island of West Lake. It's the oldest pagoda in Hanoi, was reconstructed in 1842, and has remained in this form till today. All 12 floors were decorated with statues of Buddha. Its turned-up roof was covered with shiny tiles. The area east of the pagoda is called Old Town, although it has no authentic monuments. In fact, there are hardly any old buildings at all. It's a descendant of the former trade quarter, and here you can find Textile Street, Shoe Street, Rice Street, Paper Street, or Pot Street. The street names no longer designate the products sold here. The picture is more chaotic than that. At any rate, the wide range of products is huge, and the atmosphere is very exciting. According to legend, a dragon and a fairy lived in this area with their 100 sons. Once the dragon said, "I'm a dragon, you're a fairy, so our ways must part." The fairy with her 50 sons moved into the mountains, while the dragon with the other 50 sons stayed on the coast. The kings Hum, the first rulers of Vietnam, declared themselves the descendants of the dragon. We can encounter this legend all over the country, for example, in the famous Landing Dragon's Bay in the Ha Long. Hanoi was a trade center even before Emperor Li Taitung. In the settlements situated in the meeting point of 3 rivers, there were already markets in the 5th century. In the 6th century, Li Bi built a fortress made of pails and bamboo to protect them from the Chinese. In 1010, the emperor's court moved here, and the rulers lived in the Forbidden City till 1802. Emperor Li Tantong had the Church of the Empire, the Van Mu, built in 1070 in honor of Confucius. The university set up by him operated as a kind of state administration college, training bureaucrats. From the Middle Ages, exams in Mandarin and competitions for academic degrees took place here. In memory of Confucius' 82 students, 82 turtles, carved out of 82 stones, stand here, with a plate of stone on their backs listing the names of those students who passed the Mandarin exams. The city, then called Thang Long, was a large construction site in the 16th century. Le Tuong Duc, fond of splendor, extended the imperial quarter. The parks next to the rivers and lakes, which can be seen even today, were set up at this time. The dam that created Lake Truc Bac, detached from West Lake, was also built then. In the next century, Thang Long became a double center, the seat of the Kings and Treen Lords. This brought along the fast development and blossoming of the city, since catering to the needs of the two courts necessitated more workers, craftsmen, and traders. The settlement Bat Trong, which was famous for its ceramics industry, joined the city in these years. Foreign traders appeared one after another, maintaining storehouses and depositories here. But prosperity comes to an end sooner or later. In the 19th century, Jia Long made Hue the capital city. Tranglong stopped existing, and from this time on it was called Bactan, Northern Fortress. Although it lost its political role, it maintained its commercial importance, and Chinese tradesmen, craftsmen, and traders settled down here. The city, which kept growing, was called Hanoi from 1831. From 1902, it was the capital of French Indochina. The British writer Cecil Lewis thinks, "Roofs lined up behind each other resemble capsized boats, and all of them twinkle in the sunshine." Chinese architecture seeking harmony of landscape and buildings influenced Vietnam's pagoda architecture as much as the architecture of Thailand and Cambodia. The layout of the pagodas follows the traditions of Feng Shui, which is flourishing again today. The science of wind and water seems to create harmony everywhere, and it places an especially high premium on the relations between nature and the buildings made by human beings. The architecture of pagodas flourished between the 6th and 9th centuries, spreading in all countries in the Far East. The oldest remaining brick pagoda was built in 520 and was found in China, but some Vietnamese buildings are not much younger either. The churches are generally located north-south, and especially the construction of their roofs is unique. Based on their exteriors, it's difficult to say whether they're Taoist, Confucianist, or Buddhist temples. Taoism is a faith interwoven with Chinese philosophy and healing. Confucianism isn't really a religion, although it has a connection with the Indo-Chinese ancient cult, which provides the soul of the dead with peace through various rituals. Confucius followers may become Taoist or Buddhist. The most widespread religion of the region is Buddhism, which came from India in the 1st century. 3 branches of Buddhism are distinguished: Chinese, Tibetan, and Pali Buddhism. 93% of the religious Vietnamese are Buddhists, and 7% of them are Catholics, thanks to French schools and priests, but atheism is gaining more and more ground. An interesting attempt to be found only here was born in the country: Caodaism. Graham Greene writes the following about it in his novel, The Quiet American. Once a year, Caodaists have a feast in their holy seat, Tay Ninh, 80 kilometers northwest of Saigon. They're always celebrating the anniversary of a liberation or a conquest, or some sort of Buddhist, Confucianist, or Christian festival. Caodaism is always one of my favorite chapters when I give a lecture about Vietnam to foreign visitors. Caodaism, coming from spiritualism and uniting 3 religions, is a Cochin Chinese state official's invention. The Museum of Fine Arts, which displays the works of Vietnamese artists, can be found near the Church of Literature. Ho Chi Minh means enlightened. The mausoleum of the leader of the Vietnamese national movement stands in Ba Dinh Square, where he once proclaimed the independence of the country. The statesman asked in his will to be cremated, but his descendants erected a mausoleum for him, designed similarly to Lenin's mausoleum in Moscow, in which his mummified body is displayed in a glass coffin. Ho Chi Minh was born on the 19th of May, 1890, under the name Nguyen Tat Tan, as a poor teacher's son. He lived in poverty during his adolescence, was given a Confucianist education, and finished grammar school supported by the French. He was a sailor for 3 years on a French steamship. From 1915, he lived in London, then in France. He worked as a gardener, waiter, photographer, and fireman. In Paris, he got in touch with communists and he spent a short time in Moscow. In China, the Vietnamese Communist Party was set up under his leadership. On the 2nd of September 1945, he proclaimed the independent Vietnamese Democratic Republic in front of a huge crowd in Hanoi. 24 years later, on the 2nd of September 1969, he died. Until his death, he was the country's president and prime minister. One example of his popularity is that his nickname was Father Ho. In his house, a museum in his remembrance has been set up.